Okay, so a buddy of mine, Marcus, asked me to look at a video on Facebook. So I look at the video, and it's this guy, Dr. Mike, who I assume is a real doctor. Anyway, he's talking about CRISPR and gene-edited babies, and he asked basically for my opinion. And I watched it, and it's short, it's only like 5 minutes long, but it's got me so mad. So, because it's exactly echoing the same bullshit that everybody talks. And I wanted to respond to it, but I've realized I had so much to type, it would be easier just to record it. So I'm going to go through the video, and I'm going to respond to his points, because it's horseshit. And it's got me a little mad, so I'm not going to be quite as nice as I usually am. It's labeled "A Scientist Did What? Conspiracy Theory Wednesday Checkup." So already, it's horseshit. I'll let him talk some of it. I'm probably just going to chop this thing up. So, first off,
today I'm going to be telling you all about a medical conspiracy that I actually believe in. Now, you know me. I'm a positive, uplifting, bright side kind of guy. But in this case, truly, I'm worried. And I think you should be too.
I assume this dude is a doctor.
This is a very, very serious story. Not even 2 weeks ago, I was asked to talk about this on national news.
Fox News.
What I told them then is what I'm gonna tell you now. I am scared. I'm scared this can get out of hand. I'm scared that disease can spread. Humans can be altered forever and the future generations will never look the way that they currently do.
Okay, that's my first mind-blowing point here. He's worried that humans will be altered in such a way that future generations won't look the way that they currently do. Who cares? Who cares if we have CRISPR people with green skin and blue hair? Who cares? Who cares if in 100 years there's mermaid people and Mars people and moon people and low gravity people and all kinds of different humans? If Homo erectus 2 million years ago had decided, hey, let's make sure that humans never look any different than they currently do. I'm worried about this evolution thing. It's going to change future generations. Guess what? Change is a part of nature. It's a part of life. Every species, every organism changes over time. We will too. CRISPR, no CRISPR, future generations will look different than we do, unless we wipe ourselves out. So if we live long enough, we will evolve into many forms of human. CRISPR could accelerate that. Gene editing in general could accelerate that. We could bring the future from 1,000,000 years from now to 100 years from now. I'm cool with that. Let's get better.
You can be affected. I can be affected. Kim and Kanye can be affected.
Certain people have really big foreheads.
So, Kim and Kanye, right now, today, could go get gene therapy if they wanted to. There are companies that offer it commercially. If you want to get performance-enhancing gene therapy, you can afford it. You can get it today. You want gene-edited babies? You can afford it if you can get it today. I know people on both ends. I have sat and had long conversations with people doing this work. If Kim and Kanye want to call me up and get performance-enhancing gene therapy, I can point them right to the people. 45 minutes later, they've wired the money and everything's set up. They're waiting for their appointment. They want gene-edited babies, I can send them to the guy. All this shit can happen in international waters. There's no fucking laws. You're not going to stop this shit.
A Chinese researcher came out saying he delivered a set of twin girls that have been both genetically edited using a process known as CRISPR. It's important to know that CRISPR-Cas9 is a type of gene editing that is not fully well understood, and the scientific community came to an agreement that if there was going to be any human trials on this, they have to be fully disclosed and they have to be taken into consideration only in matters of life and death. If a patient has a deadly illness that they're sure to die from, it's worth pursuing this experimental treatment in some countries where it's legal.
So he says that there was this consensus that we were going to do it in this specific sort of way and only in these specific circumstances. And so they kind of set up some half-assed rules saying, look, this is what we're going to do. And yet, someone did it a different way. Okay. That should demonstrate to you how effective your rules are going to be at controlling any of this. Just because someone says we're going to do X doesn't mean 7 billion people on the planet are all going to do X because you said so. The world's far too complex. There's far too many people.
Now, in this case, this is not our life or death situation because we actively have treatments for HIV, and it's no longer the deadly disease that it once was.
Just because you all get together and agree that that's the way you want to do it, doesn't mean that that's the only way to do it, or that that's the right way to do it. Limiting human genetic engineering to specifically life-endangering circumstances is just cowardice.
Through a series of well-coordinated posts through the Associated Press and YouTube, the researcher released the information that he was successful in doing this gene editing on human embryos and was able to deliver these 2 baby girls. Now, the entire medical community and scientific community alike has been up in arms, and rightfully so.
Okay, first of all, that's bullshit. Yes, a lot of them have, not the entire community. I don't know about the medical community, but the genetic engineering community is not the whole damn community. First of all, right off the bat, George Church came out in support. George Church is the most famous genetic engineer in the world. He was the leader of the Human Genome Project. He's on the Human Genome Project Right, where they're writing a human genome from scratch. He's the guy who wants to bring back woolly mammoths, etc. So, George Church is on board, and lots of others are. And a lot more of them than what they're saying on publicly are supportive. A lot of this outrage is just people protecting their tenure and saying what they're supposed to and things like that. But behind the scenes, they all wanted to be that guy. They all wanted to be up there at the front, at the cutting edge, doing the thing, right? And maybe not all of them, but lots and lots of them. A whole lot of people are just upset that they got beaten to the punch. And beyond that, a whole lot more are legitimately excited about the potential and the application and the utility of this stuff, but they know that it's expected of them to come out against it. Because we have this sort of fake bioethics that isn't really rooted in ethics, it's rooted in guarding authority figures.
You have to understand how shady this entire situation is. There's this one scientist conducting controversial research. His hospital and university are not aware that he's doing this. He's saying there's a 3rd baby underway, won't release the names of his subjects/parents of these babies. He's altering the future generations of this world with no oversight and truly no regard for humanity.
Okay, that line probably pisses me off the most. So first of all, he's altering the future generations of this world. Every fucking person ever who's had a kid has done that. You choose a partner, you breed, you have a new combination of genes that's never been before, you have spontaneously changed the future of humanity. Okay? Choose to have a child, choose not to have a child, choose anything. Every choice changes the future. So, yes, he made a slight change, a fucking minute change, mimicking a mutation that's naturally occurring. But even if it wasn't, even if it was something completely fantastically new, who cares? Humanity is not so fragile. If the mutation that these girls have sweeps through all of humanity, and we all in the future end up 100 generations from now, we all have this mutation, that mutation must have been fucking fantastic. That must be a turning point in human evolution. For any allele to be passed to the majority of the population says something very good about that allele. Now, if a variation, if a mutant allele, if a mutation in a gene is negative, then that mutation will be removed by natural selection. It'll be reduced and reduced. Starting out with a population of 2, a gene like that will not pass to the majority of the population. In all likelihood, gene flow will eliminate it just on pure statistics, unless it confers some sort of significant selective advantage. So, the question is, for this to have any kind of broad, sweeping, humanity-altering effects, it must be fucking fantastic. So, he's either saying, we have done something great, or we've done nothing. So what is this fear? It's complete horseshit. And then the idea that he's doing it with no regard for humanity, that's a supposition that humanity must never change, and so to change humanity is to destroy it. I'm sorry, but there will come a day when we have evolved beyond what we are. Genetic engineering may make that day closer, but that's a good thing, not a bad thing. Humanity, the best humans to ever be, have yet to be. They're in the future. It's our job to get there, not to hold them back.
Side note, no official scientific quality organization has come out and validated his work in this trial. So we don't even know if this guy is telling the truth. Why is the entire scientific community up in arms about this? He just did a trial, whatever, not a big deal. No, it's a big deal, and there are true ethical repercussions that come with this sort of testing. First of all, he has no idea how this sort of CRISPR gene editing is going to affect future generations. Will this gene mutate? Will it be stable? Will this child be able to live a full and healthy life?
Oh my God. Okay. Will this gene mutate? I can answer that one for you real quick. Yes, it will. All genes mutate. All genes are subject to mutation. Mutation happens because of copy error. Copy error is endemic to the copying process. It doesn't matter what gene it is. Will this gene be stable? Well, we can pretty easily figure that one out, because the things that destabilize genes, with things like jumping genes and retrotransposons and those sorts of things, or heavy repeats, that sort of stuff, those things we can look at, we understand those mechanisms, and no, it's not going to be unstable. Any more unstable than any other gene that you have. Will they live a long and healthy life? That we don't know. We have no reason to think that anything negative will happen to them, because the people who have this same or similar mutation naturally, nothing particularly negative happens to them either.
He does not have the answers to these questions, because none of us have the answers to these questions.
Except that it seems like anybody with a decent understanding of genetics has the answers to these questions.
Second, think about the ethical problems when it comes from a disparity standpoint.
Oh yes, let's think about that, because that's where the real fucking grind comes in.
Think about if we can cure all sorts of diseases, and then the people who can't afford to get this type of treatment still have the diseases. Think about the inequality that creates.
Like the inequality we have in medicine right fucking now? Like the system that we have has already created? You mean like you go to a free clinic and you sit for hours and you wait and you wait and you wait and you hope that the doctor will see you, and it's the lowest paid, lowest quality doctor in the land, and he just gives you the simplest solution to get you out of his office so he can grind through the next few? Or you have your own personal doctor who comes to your home and he only attends you because you're a fucking billionaire. Or you need an organ transplant, and they're almost always given to the fantastically wealthy. Or if you're wealthy enough and desperate enough and willing enough, you can go to the organ black market, pay someone to get you a compatible organ. They'll find someone compatible, kill them, take their organ, and give it to you. If you're rich, you already have the best medicine in the world. If you're poor, you're kind of fucked around the world. So, the question is, how is this significantly different? The system that we have in place creates this inequality. Driving gene editing deeper into this system is not going to avoid social inequality.
I've seen sci-fi movies like this in the past where these social disparities exist and the rich can cure any illness, change their genetics, essentially be superhuman, while the poor had to live with their illnesses and disabilities with no hope in sight. I don't know about you, but I don't want to live in a world like that.
Yeah, that's today. That's why people die, because they're rationing their insulin to make it to payday so then they can go buy insulin. I've done it myself, rationing my fucking asthma inhaler to make it to payday so I can go get a fucking inhaler, okay? Tell me, Dr. Mike, why we don't have income inequality when it comes to medicine already. Because we fucking do, all over, and it's fucking terrible. You want to talk about the rich being able to afford gene therapy to cure all their diseases and be superhuman. We are already there. He's not aware of it, but I'm there. I'm this deep in the fucking gene editing and genetic engineering black market, okay? It's out there, okay? You can go get that shit right now today. People have. I could give you a list of CEOs who have had not illegal because they had the money to go to other countries, but what would be illegal in the United States, gene therapy done on themselves so that they could be fitter, faster, stronger. People are already doing this. It's just about money. How much do you have? How much can you pay? And we can get you hooked up. Okay? Gene therapy, gene doping, that sort of thing, to enhance your athleticism is already happening. They're already working on stuff that's supposed to be anti-aging, that's really only available to the fantastically wealthy. You got $1 million, I can get you some gene therapy today. Okay? Well, you won't get the therapy today, but you can pay for it today and get it in a month or two. If you want CRISPR babies, I can hook you up, but it's going to cost you. So, tell me how we're not already there. The question isn't how do we avoid that situation. The question is how the fuck do we get out of it? Because it's just getting broader and broader. When companies like Luxturna can come out with a cure for a particular kind of blindness that's a gene therapy and charge $800,000 an eye and set their prices based on what people are willing to pay, not based on what it costs to make and what it costs to do and what the research and regulatory requirements cost, when they set it based on what a parent might be willing to pay to save their kid's sight, or in the case of other gene therapy, save their kids' lives, they don't care if you've got to go get 3 jobs and 3 mortgages. They'll set it to whatever gets them another Lamborghini and a new island. Okay? So tell me how somehow getting control over this stuff is going to reduce income inequality when it comes to genetic engineering. Maybe in the future, someday, the price of this stuff will come down the way it did with like cell phones and airfare and those sorts of things. And more people will have access to this technology, and I think that's the case. The question is, if we regulate it so heavily that no one is able to compete, no one's able to enter the marketplace, no one's able to do any DIY, no one's able to make open source, no one's able to do any of these things, then what's going to happen is the only people who can play this game, the only people who can participate in these technologies will be multi-billion-dollar governments and corporations. And then you tell me how we're going to keep them from monopolizing power.
And even thinking further, if we can change genomes in humans, we can change genomes in viruses, in bacteria. If, God forbid, a terrorist group gets access to some of this gene editing and manipulates a virus or a bacteria, they can kill millions very, very quickly.
Okay, this is something I hear a lot, and let me tell you, as someone who's someone who for the last 3 years has done a shit ton of genetic engineering, that is not easy. Especially, this is my lab, okay? Especially in a DIY, doing it in a cave, no funding, trying to like biohack a super virus. It's not gonna fucking work. It will not work, okay? That is so complex. And then you need to test the stuff, and you need to do it. And you are not going to just sit there and create something worse than what has already evolved. None of that shit is one mutation away. If Ebola was one mutation away from being a super virus, or if the flu was one mutation away from being a super virus, it would have happened. Do you know how often the flu mutates? It's a retrovirus. It mutates ridiculously often. And think about the millions of people that have it and the quadrillions of flu particles in each person's body. The probability of a mutation, any single mutation that can happen, has happened over and over and over and over again. There's nothing immediately adjacent to the current flu strain that makes it a super virus. There's no simple little, I'm going to knock this gene out, I'm going to add this little thing, I'm going to just tweak it a little, and that will make it the superbug. No. When that happens, the flu gets worse. It gets less infectious, less invasive, less capable of spreading, less something, and it doesn't evolve in that direction. So it goes back to the way that it was. The mean of the population that has those better working genes, doesn't have the mutation, survives and passes on its gene. Otherwise, it would have already evolved into a supervirus. Now, Zoonotic viruses that jump from species to species, those can be very dangerous. You don't have to do you don't have to do any CRISPR gene editing to make that shit happen. You want to talk about already deadly viruses? How about vaccine-resistant Ebola? You could just go scoop some up. You could just go get some off a guy who's got it. There's no gene editing required for bioterrorism. In fact, it would be a really piss-poor investment of time and energy. You would hope they try to gene edit a supervirus, because that's just going to tie up their resources for years and years and years while they're not hurting people. Where if they just take the simple route of just go get some stuff and do it, that's way easier. We don't have any biosecurity. That's a big problem. But CRISPR is not the risk. CRISPR is not what we should be afraid of. What we should be afraid of is naturally occurring, easily accessible, horrible viruses that you can just go get and distribute. That's where bioterrorism is going to come in. This guy clearly has never done any genetic engineering. It's not as easy as he thinks it is.
And the scariest part is we wouldn't even know who's responsible. How would you even track that? My conspiracy theory in this, I think countries are racing to do this, and I think that the future is going to be scary because there are going to be no limits to this. Do we cure cancer? Probably. Do we eliminate disease? Probably. But then what happens with overpopulation?
Okay. That blows my fucking mind and it pisses me off. Do we cure cancer? Probably. Do we cure all diseases? Probably. But then what do we do with all the people who didn't die? This is a doctor who's saying, what are we going to do with all the extra people we cure with our incredible future medicines? Shouldn't we avoid doing all this medical research so we don't accidentally save too many lives? This is a doctor who's arguing against saving lives. This is a doctor who's pro-death and pro-disease because he's anti-genetic engineering. So he's so against genetic engineering that he's embraced disease and death. He's a shit human being. And Dr. Mike, you don't deserve the title doctor. You're a shit doctor, and you're a shit human being. If you think people deserve to die because they have genetic diseases, fuck you. I have a genetic disease. I do. I was born with it, obviously. It's benign hereditary neutropenia. My brother and my sister both had it as well. I spent the first 5 years of my life in the hospital, constantly. My immune system didn't work. I got sick almost every day. I almost died over and over again. I do not know how my parents handled having 3 dying children for years and years. I had decided when I was a teenager not to have kids. Nature made other choices for me, and I do have kids, and they're healthy, but they carry it, and they're going to pass it on, and we have to watch it in my grandkids and my great-grandkids and my great-great-grandkids. But if we could just eliminate it, I wouldn't have to have that worry. My kids wouldn't have to have that worry. My grandkids wouldn't have to have that worry. If he would rather I had died, if he would rather my kids had just died, my grandkids had just died, fuck him. The people, the hundreds of people who send me emails, who send me Facebook messages, who call me, who tell me about their mothers, brothers, sisters, wives, husbands, children who are dying of genetic diseases, the diseases they have themselves. You talk to somebody and they're like, I'm halfway through my life expectancy. My child is 3/4 of the way through their life expectancy because they have cystic fibrosis. My nervous system is falling down around me. You tell these people that we need them to die so that we don't have too much population. You talk to them and tell them you would prefer that they had died, that they go ahead and suffer their diseases and die so that we don't have to figure out what to do with the extra people. Fuck you, Dr. Mike.
What happens when soldiers are genetically changed to be superior than regular humans?
I want to point out the weapons of mass destruction argument, the super soldier argument. First of all, super soldiers are going to happen. So you tell me, what happens when super soldiers are engineered to be superior to regular humans? So this is the beginning of the insanity. So I'll just hold this for a second. What organizations would create a super soldier? What organizations have and would create weapons of mass destruction and use them? Hold those in your mind. We'll continue.
A lot of people say that the problem of my generation is going to be economics, immigration, politics. While all those are serious issues, as a scientist and as a doctor, I worry about this. If we don't get control of gene editing, it's going to be our next nuclear war. Mark my words.
Okay, on this, I agree with him. I just disagree about who we is. When he says, if we don't get control of gene editing, it's going to be our next nuclear war, I so totally agree. But I think we is everybody, humanity. In his mind, we is the authority figures. In his mind, we is governments, corporations, academic institutions, those sorts of people. Those are the people who should have control of these things. That way, you don't get super soldiers. And yet, who would create super soldiers? Who has soldiers? Governments have soldiers. Governments would be the people who have super soldiers. So you want the government to get control of it so we don't get weapons of mass destruction, super soldiers that are superior to the average human, weapons of mass destruction, and income inequality. So you're saying you want the most powerful group of millionaires and billionaires in the world to set up rules about the use and application, who has access, what they can do with it, of this technology, so that the rich and powerful don't disproportionately use this to their own benefit. You want the rich and powerful to take control and protect everyone from the rich and powerful. This is psychosis. This is shockingly irrational, dumbass thinking. It borders on either absurd or intellectually dishonest. He's either full of shit or he's an idiot.
All right, back to good old optimistic Dr. Mike. While I do believe that conspiracy is possible, what I think is more likely, and I actually hope this is gonna happen, is that governments are gonna come to their senses and understand that when they're doing genome research, even if it's in a bioterrorism standpoint or try to do it to protect themselves, if you go overboard, you're threatening all of humanity, including themselves. So my hope is that they'll put controls in place, not go overboard with this type of research, and really just be smart about it.
So, you want governments and powerful organizations to protect us from the rich and powerful, and you want governments to protect us from super soldiers, and you want governments to protect us from weapons of mass destruction. So far, the only people who have soldiers, weapons of mass destruction, and massive control over income inequality is governments and corporations, right? So, should Blackwater have control over the super soldier program? Who should get access to this? I have another solution that makes some actual fucking sense. Democratize access to this technology. Get it in everybody's hands. Make it stupid, trinket, simple. Make it something that anybody can do. Make it something kids do in school. I have taught genetic engineering in high schools. I have had high school students genetically modify bacteria with me. It's not impossible. Okay? Simple alterations, just adding a gene, something like that, are easy to do. To make something that does something complex, like you want to make a new kind of tree or something that really has an impact on the environment, that's not easy. Surprisingly, the environment isn't fragile. It's a fantastically robust system that can take a hell of a lot of perturbation because the system is constantly perturbed. There is mutation everywhere all the time, and the system doesn't collapse. So, simple mutations are not going to fuck up the world. That's irrational. The sun is the greatest engine of mutation that there has ever been on the planet. It constantly mutates the layer of life that's spread over the whole surface of the earth. Mutations happen everywhere all the time. Bacteria, viruses, everything. Just a big giant soup of mutants. And guess what? We're still here. 4 billion years, we're still here. Now, Will it create change? Yes, probably so, but it's not easy. Who gets to decide the future of humanity? Who gets to be the guy with the button? Do you really want to give the world leaders we have today exclusive control over this technology? Do you really want to ask the people that we have running the various countries around the world and the people who might get elected next, do you really want to ask them, hey, decide the future evolution of humanity for me? Or do you want to participate in the process? Do you want to be one of the hands out of 1 billion hands that guide humanity for the next 1,000 years into a whole new space? Personally, I want to see this technology democratized so that everyone has access to it. When everyone has access to it, nobody has too much control over it. Anything you do, I can undo. Anything you do, we can undo. And everybody can look after everybody's collective interests. And nobody gets a disproportionate amount of power. If you make something that allows you to, be Captain America, guess what? I have the same technology. I can do it too. Now everybody's Captain America. Super Soldier walks down the street, guess what? He's not that interesting. He's not that exciting. Everybody's a super soldier. Anybody's a super soldier. And when anybody's a super soldier, nobody's a super soldier. So, you want to stop governments from using super soldiers to abuse normal humans? Guess what? Upgrade the normal humans. That's your only chance. You're not going to tell every government in the world, don't do a super soldier program. They're going on right now. DARPA was working on synthetic artificial human chromosomes like 10 years ago. Okay? I promise you, our government and other governments around the world right now are working on super soldier programs. I promise you. So, and they're not the only ones. Private corporations, various people, it's happening. I know people. So if you take this scenario and you have a democratized, available, distributed thing, if you can cure a disease, I can make a knockoff version. Boom, 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 boom. We can easily distribute this stuff and we can get rid of the power element. That's the only serious concern here, is this technology will bring with it a tremendous amount of power. And how we handle that power, how we distribute that power, is what's going to determine the road we walk down. In my future, I say, let's give this power to everyone. Because the organizations that he would rather have power have a history of making and using weapons of mass destruction on civilian populations. They have a history of making and using soldiers on civilian populations. They have a history of making rules that specifically create inequality in their advantage. So tell me why I should give them this power too. I say no. I say this belongs to all of us. Biology is too fundamental to the nature of humanity to give this kind of technology to any one person or group. By its nature, we are all biology. We have to all have it. We have to all take control. It's up to us collectively, in the chaos of our own, the soup of our collective actions and choices. Humanity will evolve in 1,000 directions, from 1,000 points of inspiration. 1,000 ideas and thoughts and dreams and wants will bloom into a new kind of humanity. 1,000 new kinds of humanity. Not just one dude in a boardroom's vision. That is a terrifying thought. His irrational fears are behind the doors he wants to open. And the beautiful future that he hopes for, that we all hope for, is behind the doors he wants to close. So, these arguments are insane. These arguments are completely irrational. The only people, the only way this technology can be guaranteed to be used for the net good of humanity on the whole is if we all use it. Take this technology, learn it, use it, build a fucking lab shed, okay? Create something beautiful. And I'll create something beautiful. And 1 million other people will create something beautiful. And yes, someone's going to use it incorrectly. But honestly, the system is robust. Now, the people that frighten me, those are the people who have and desire and seek power. Those are the people who do not need this power. Those are the people who cannot be trusted with it. What we have to do is we have to hold this line. If you want to do a little more thinking and reading on this stuff, I'll try to link some stuff for Dr. George Church. Here I'll link something for Dr. Josiah Zayner. And there's a talk by Freeman Dyson, guy who came up with the Dyson sphere, about the future potential of democratized, distributed gene editing in the future, where we could go with it, who we could be. And it's so interesting because he was talking in 2003 in this, and I started this project to basically do a lot of what he's talking about, especially with the dogs, in 2015. So the man, even at his age, is so far ahead of his time. He always has been. The man has the clarity of vision to see through the system to the truth.